Are you a parent navigating the complexities of co-parenting, family court, or even domestic violence? If you are looking for ways to help protect your children and build a strong and supportive community around you, then look no further. Gray Minds Think Alike is your go-to resource for everything related to the complexities of family life. Join us as we dive into thoughtful conversations with experts and explore practical tips and strategies for tackling the challenges of parenthood in the throes of adversity so that no parent feels alone and every child's safety is protected. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Gray Minds Think Alike. I'm your host, Kessler, and today I'm speaking with Lynn Stroud, a renowned advocate in trauma recovery, as well as a legal analyst. Lynn also participates with the Storytelling Collective at the National Domestic Violence Hotline, sharing her experience with intimate partner violence and reproductive coercion. Lynn is a sexual assault survivor and now makes it her mission to help others by teaching practical strategies for cultivating a trauma-enforced mindset and raising awareness to break the stigma surrounding trauma. So welcome, Lynn. Thank you so much for joining us today. And if you don't mind, if you can just tell our listeners a little bit about your background, you can go from there.
Sure. Thank you so much, first of all, for having me, Allie. I really appreciate it. So I have been a legal analyst, a paralegal for about 20 years. And I actually ended up in the legal field not because of my background and the abuse that I suffered, but I really just ended up in that because I thought it was such a fascinating field to go into. But I'd say it has really helped me years later while trying to make my way through all of this trauma and recover from all of these assaults. It's been really useful to have those skills to be able to do the research and to be able to see what laws are current here in America and what bills are pending and also what's going on globally.
Right. Well, yeah, that's definitely a great background to have. So I guess if we want to go into why you feel so strongly about sharing your experiences regarding all of these epic failures in the family court system, I'd love to hear.
Right. Absolutely. So, although the initial sexual assault and reproductive coercion that I experienced was early on in my life.
I'm just going to stop you right there. Can you just explain what reproductive coercion is for our listeners?
Absolutely.
I think I know what it is, but I just want to make sure that it's correct.
So, reproductive coercion is a form of abuse where someone intentionally interferes with another person's reproductive health, decision-making, or pregnancy outcome, often to maintain power and control within a relationship. And here are some examples, just in case that's a little bit too high level.
Okay.
It can involve birth control sabotage. So there are things like stealthing, where a partner removes a condom in the middle of a sexual act without the other's knowledge.
Okay.
There's pregnancy coercion, and that could involve pressure or threats to get a partner pregnant when they don't want to, or continue a pregnancy, or force them into an abortion if they don't want that.
Okay, so it can go either way, for
Absolutely.
or against. Okay, got it.
Absolutely. And that could also include even trying to not only just threatening them or verbally trying to convince them not to have an abortion, but it can also include financially taking away the means to get an abortion or refusing to allow them access a car to get to an abortion clinic or to get to a Planned Parenthood.
Right.
And it can involve just other tactics like monitoring someone's menstrual cycle or withholding financial support for them to get contraceptive devices, and basically any kind of verbal, physical, coercive threat to control their reproductive choices. So it really includes a lot.
Right. Well, now that you just said all that, I realized that I have been a victim of that as well, because my entire issue with Grayson was the fact that I decided to have him and not have an abortion because I was being pressured to have the abortion in which I did not want to do. So I guess now I know that I'm a victim of that as well. And the whole reason why Grayson's father was so angry was because he felt that this was not the way to bring a child into the world and that I ruined his life by making this decision when he didn't have to be a part of it at all. In fact, I gave him that out, but interesting. Okay, so now let's hear about your background with it.
Sure. Well, first of all, I just want to say I'm so incredibly sorry that you went through that, that you experienced that. And I'm also
Thank you.
so incredibly sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
And my heart goes out to you. And it's something that no one should ever have to experience.
I
Um,
agree. And that's why we're here today.
exactly. So the first time reproductive coercion happened to me, I was young. I was 20 years old, and it happened with an older man. But the way that it happened was that we had an agreed upon, essentially, I had a snafu with my birth control pills. And the agreed upon method of contraception that we had agreed on was that he was going to pull out. And when it came to the last minute, he did not pull out. And I was so shocked when it first happened that I just looked at him and said, "What did you just do?" And this is a
This is before
legally,
Plan B.
right. And at that point, it's interesting. Plan B, I think, was legal and available, but I don't think it was available over the counter at that point. I think you still had to go to your gynecologist and ask for it,
Right.
right? Because this was very early 2000s.
Yeah, I don't think
Um,
I've heard of it back then.
right. I want to say it became readily over the counter maybe like 2004, 2006. So this was like years earlier. So at that point, I would have had to go to my gynecologist, who was the
Right.
same gynecologist as my mother. I was so afraid of the pregnancy even coming out to begin with, because once I found out that I was pregnant, even after that one time, I didn't want anyone to know, even though
Right.
I was legally an adult. I was over 18 and I was 20.
Sure.
I
Oh,
don't
it's
think we
scary
can
for
honestly
anyone.
look around at any 20-year-old and say, that's an adult right there. Like,
Right. No, for sure.
and the man that I
I
was
was
with
still in
was
college when I was 20, so I definitely,
as was I, and my boyfriend at the time, the father of the baby, was 27. So he was quite a bit older, done with
right.
college, established in his career, all these things. And when we started talking about it, once I told him I was pregnant, one of the reasons that I did give him was, look, I'm still in college. I'm
Right.
not ready to be a mother. I still have 2 more years to go to get my bachelor's. I
Right.
might want to go to law school. I don't know. I'm right in the middle of this transitionary period in my life. And also, the father of the baby, he and I had only been dating for about 4 or 5 months.
So did he
So
intend, so you did get pregnant from that incident,
I
correct?
did.
You
I
did.
did.
And was that something that you talked about before? Did he want children? Were you talking about a future? Or was this sort of, I'm playing these games to sort of lock her in because I want to control her?
In the at first I didn't think that it was the coercion. At
Right.
first I legitimately thought that he had made a mistake, because when I first said to him, "What the heck did you do?" his response was, "Oh, I'm sorry, I was drunk, I forgot."
Right.
But I was reminding him the entire time that we were having sex, "Don't forget to pull out. Don't
Right.
forget to pull out."
Right.
So really, there's no excuse. But once I was able to look back at the situation years later, I realized, based on the way that he acted and the things that he said, that he 100% intentionally impregnated me and wanted to trap me into a relationship with him. Once it was time for us to sit down and talk about what we wanted to do about the pregnancy and how we were going to proceed going forward, he was so adamant against me getting the abortion. And it wasn't an easy decision for me to make. It wasn't like I just snapped my fingers and I was like, "Oh, I'll just go take care of this on Tuesday and never think about it again." It's an important decision.
Sure.
Whether either way you go on the spectrum, it's a really important decision. But I knew I knew that I was not ready. I knew that our relationship wasn't ready. And I had already started to see some red flags from this person, even before that incident. He was
Right.
starting to get more controlling, more possessive. He was jabbing me with these little insults and, side eyed comments. And it
Sure.
was just getting more coercive as the
Right.
relationship was going on.
Right.
And so eventually, thankfully, at that time, I was able to get an abortion. It was legally accessible in the state that I was in.
Okay.
And also, this was years ago before Roe v. Wade was overturned.
Right.
But he actually refused to drive me to the procedure. He refused to go
Right.
with me and he refused to pay for it.
Okay. But you did it.
I did it.
Okay.
I did
That
it.
was going to be my next question.
I did it. I eventually had a friend who agreed to take me.
Sure.
I currently reside in Texas, but at the
Okay.
time I lived in New Jersey.
Okay.
And so definitely a more liberal state. The whole process of obtaining it, although stressful and emotional, was fairly easy. Like Planned Parenthood, when I went to go see them, they were very kind. They were very understanding, told me what my options were. And when the one thing I was not expecting when I approached the clinic the day of was protesters.
Yes, I experienced that as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually went to a clinic when I was pregnant with Gray. It was just like an all women's clinic, but apparently they're really big on abortion there. I wasn't going there for an abortion, but I just went to get some intel on how far along I was and whatnot. And there were a crowd of people with signs up about against abortion. And I was like, I'm not having one, but it's my right if I want one.
Right, right. And that's the terrible part is that I think people are going to these clinics for all different kinds of reasons. And
Right.
so, you've got these people standing outside at what is such a stressful and emotional time
Right.
in a young woman's life with signs screaming things at her or throwing things
Right.
at her. It's absolutely horrific. Um,
Definitely scary.
yeah,
And
but
you don't even know to what level they would go.
right. I think the interesting twist about my story is that it ended up affecting me later in life because not only did I end up staying with that man in a relationship with him after the abortion, we ended up staying together for the next 3 or 4 years.
Oh,
And the
wow.
relationship at that pivotal point, the abuse kicked up a
Right.
notch.
Sure.
He was so angry with me at the decision that I had made,
Right.
and that he wasn't able to get away with his plan of trapping me, that it escalated into verbal abuse and emotional abuse, psychological abuse. And it
Right.
was horrific. And it went on for the next 4 years
Wow. I
after
mean,
that.
it sounds like you were still together, so I don't know what he was so upset about. It's not like you broke up right after,
Yeah,
but
I think he was just so upset that I hadn't gone through with the pregnancy. And he wanted any way possible to punish me. And I think he was just such a damaged person to begin with. And it just became horrific after a while. At one point, we didn't live together, but we were still dating. And I broke up with him. And this was after like 3, 4 years of us going back and forth in this tumultuous, I break up and then we get back together in this awful, vicious, abusive cycle.
right.
And then finally, I put my foot down and I said, that's it. We're not doing this cycle anymore. We're done. And we were broken up for maybe 3 months. It was like the longest we had ever been broken up. And I thought, you know what? This is good. I'm finally free of him and I can finally move on. I'm still in my mid 20s. I have my whole
Right.
life ahead of me.
Right.
And I found out that he was stalking me.
Right.
So he actually broke into the house that I was living in. And I was there alone because the roommate that I had was in Germany for the summer.
Okay.
And the only thing I had with me was my dog. And unfortunately, my dog knew who he was. So
Right. So he
she
didn't
didn't
bark. She
bark
didn't
when
bark.
he broke in the middle of the night. And he just came right in and walked into my bedroom, scared me. And,
What did he
you
want?
know, he, the conversation with him, I was trying to like catch my bearings. So I think I was so startled and I just started asking him questions like, what are you doing here? Why are you here? Did you hurt my dog? Things
Right.
like that. And he was like, no, I'm just here to see you. I just really wanted to see you. And I was like, how did you get in? He said, you left the door open. And I was like, no, not the way I was raised. I don't think
Right.
I've ever left a door unlocked in my life,
Right.
ever.
And that's still
um,
not an invitation for someone to walk through the door.
exactly. Just because you don't have to break to enter doesn't mean
Right.
you can enter, right? Like
Right.
it's not your domicile. You need to, yeah. But so I ended up just trying to appease him as we were sitting next to each other, like on my bed. And I
Right.
said, okay, you know what? I don't want this to escalate any further. Why don't we just go to sleep and we'll talk about it in the morning? And when I woke up, he was gone and he had left me this incredibly scary note that said a bunch of things, but one of the creepiest things it said was, I just wanted to watch you sleep.
Yeah. Well, I could see how it might be nice to hear at some point, but it is definitely creepy.
Yeah. But the interesting thing about that is that it ended up affecting me later in life because I carried all that trauma with me. And because I had such a toxic circle of friends around me at the time, because many of them were also friends with the boyfriend, that when I actually reached out to a few of them and said, he broke into my house last night, I think I should go get a protective order. Every single one of them was like, no, don't do that. You're going to ruin his life. And they all said that the note was kind of sweet.
Right. So to him, he didn't break in. He was just coming to say hello
Right.
because he
Right. Just
missed you.
popping in at 3
Right.
a.m.
Did he
Just
ever do that again after that?
no, he didn't. He
Okay.
didn't. But I really, it's upsetting because I really missed my window to be able to get some legal action against
Right.
him and really hold him accountable. And sadly, with people like that, if you don't catch them at the right moment and hold them accountable, they really believe that they can get away with anything and that they're
Right.
entitled to anything.
Right. So what happened after that?
So we ended up breaking up eventually, and it ended in, this terrible, basically like violent verbal encounter. And we were living together at that time. And I eventually put everything that I could into a car. My dog was the first thing I put into the car, but I put everything I could into a car and I just drove away. And I went to my parents and I had to finally open up about everything
Right.
that had happened over the last 4 or 5 years. And even still, I didn't open up about all of it, but I had to
Right.
finally sit down with my parents and say, I've been terrified. I've been
Right.
living in a controlling nightmare. And yeah, it was terrible, but I was able to break free from him. And so I thought, move on for the better.
Sure.
Things are going to be, I've got my whole life ahead of me. But I kept getting into that same pattern, exactly, like with just similar men over and
Right.
over again. I dated another man a few years later. I was maybe 26, 27, and he was also older, so he was like in his early 30s. And I
Right.
thought, again, he's got a house, he's got a job, he's got a car, he's good, he's
Right.
got all the good things on paper that everyone should have. And that relationship became abusive as well, and it became physically abusive and verbally abusive in a different way, but also in similar ways. He was a very large man, and he would shove me around and kind of pretend that it was a game, but he would shove me into things but pretend that we were play fighting or something. It was so manipulative and so insidious.
Why
And
do you think that
actually
is that
that
many women actually fall into a pattern where they attract the same type of men? Do you think it's something that stems from their childhood or the way they're brought up, or maybe some sort of, I'm just curious on your take because I probably am guilty of the same thing.
I think for some of us, I can't speak for every woman, but
Sure.
I think for some of us, it absolutely stems from our childhood.
Right.
If I look back, I would never say that my father was physically abusive, but my father he was so emotionally absent
Right. I was
when
just
I
going
was
to say
growing
mine
up.
was all emotionally unavailable.
Exactly. And I think that a
Right.
lot of us, you seem like you might be somewhat close in age to me. I think some of us with a lot of those parents that maybe fall into that boomer era, I think a lot of us are looking back and realizing a lot of our parents were really emotionally unavailable.
Yeah.
And that probably stems from their childhood.
Sure.
Like their parents were coming straight out of war. I mean,
Right.
everyone was
No,
just
it's
trying to gather food and
generational. Right.
right, there's all this generational trauma that gets passed on and passed on. And the culture that I was raised in was so misogynistic and overprotective when I was a kid. It was like the boys could do whatever they wanted and the
Right.
girls needed to deal with it.
Right.
And that was enforced like not only culturally, but, religiously and, just at school and even in my own family, because I'm a girl and I'm the youngest of four children.
Right.
So if I'm the baby of the family, everyone is going to try to huddle around and protect the baby. So instead of learning to speak up for myself, I just learned to quiet myself. And anytime anything upset me, I just swallowed it.
Right.
And that's, I think, what led me into these recurrent violent relationships, these toxic, terrible relationships.
Right.
And the man that I ended up dating in my late 20s, I was actually raped by him while we were dating. I never reported that either because the way that it happened was the sex started consensually, but part of the way through, it took a very violent turn. And he then sexually assaulted me. And that's how the sex finished. I felt like even he was telling me right after it happened, I didn't rape you. I didn't rape you. I may have
Right.
gotten a little rough, but I didn't rape you.
Right.
And I felt like if I go to the police and it's my word against his, and I tell them that we were already having sex, and then he got violent with me and held me down and forcibly had sex with me,
Right.
they won't believe a word that I say,
No, it's true.
you know?
It's true.
And a few years after that, I actually met my first husband. And at first, he seemed like a dream. There was so much love bombing going on, and I had just gotten out of that second really abusive relationship where I was sexually assaulted. And he just said all the perfect things. I would never hurt you. I would never
Right.
force you. We want the same things. Look, we both want a family. You had to give up that baby before. You had to have that abortion because you weren't ready and someone got you pregnant before you were ready, but now you're ready. Now
Right.
you're approaching 30 and we can start a life together, and now you can have that baby that you always wanted, that hurts you so deeply inside, that the loss.
Right.
And everything he was saying was like right on line, right on line. And it was love bombing. And he had me completely fooled,
Right.
completely fooled. Told me things about himself that I found out later were not true, degrees that he had, universities that he attended, things that he had done in his life, things that he had not done. He completely failed to mention that he had been arrested for distributing drugs
Oh,
years earlier. That would have been nice to know.
sure. Yeah.
And, but by the time I found out these things, I was so enmeshed in him. I was so like trauma bonded
Right.
with him. And I felt like, and it seems silly to say that to myself now because now it's like over 10 years later, but
Right.
I thought I'm running out of time. And if I don't have children with him, I'm going to miss my window to
Right.
have children. And everyone has flaws. But you know what? We love each other and we're going to work on the flaws together. But no one's perfect. So let's just make this work.
Right.
Just like my parents did. Hey, my dad wasn't perfect, but my mom made it work. And I'm going to be just like my mom. And I
Right.
admire my mother so much because she's so strong. But in a way, what she did for me to witness it was so toxic because
Right.
I witnessed her stay
Right.
when maybe the best thing for her was to leave, to take
Right.
us and to leave.
Right. Like staying isn't necessarily strong. We may have thought it was strong then because we're like, wow, she's really holding it together for the family. But I firmly believe that if it is not working out, end it because it's best for all parties involved.
Absolutely.
A lot
Absolutely.
of couples stay together because of the children, and I'm always like, no, separate because of the children. Like
Absolutely.
that's what you need to do to be, have a healthy, parent-child relationship.
I couldn't agree more.
Right.
And so once I married him, at this point, I was in my early 30s. And of course, he wanted to try to get pregnant right away. He started talking about that even right when we were first talking, before we even got engaged. Oh, I want children with you. I'm so madly in love with you. Because we had known each other as kids, like
Right.
teenagers. And so he was like, oh, I've always been in love with you. I've been thinking about you for the past 20 years and all the time we missed out on. And so we started trying to get pregnant right away. And we ran into fertility issues for the first, I'd say, year or so. And then started seeing a fertility specialist. And I ended up getting pregnant 3 times. And I lost all 3 pregnancies to
Oh,
miscarriage.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Thank you. But it kept me even more trauma bonded to him, because
Right.
then I wasn't just dealing with past traumatic events and the way that he was love bombing me and lying to me, but now I'm dealing with grief on top of it. And I'm letting all this pile up. And no matter what I do, no matter how many counselors I talk to or therapists that I see at this time, I'm never able to like fully verbalize everything that's happened. I can never like fully peel back all the layers of the onion to get to the center,
Right.
you know. And I wasn't able to do that until 2 years ago. But I ended up eventually getting pregnant, and the pregnancy took. I carried to term. I had a beautiful daughter. And there was some behavior that I was so concerned about. There was definitely prescription drug usage, or I should say, prescription drug abuse going on. That escalated once I got pregnant, and it escalated even more once my daughter was born. And the way that he knew that he could trap me was because we had all these deep conversations about our past.
Right.
And one of the things that I had told him about was that first boyfriend, and how he had gotten me pregnant, how he had coercively, reproductively coerced me,
Right.
how he had sexually assaulted me, how he had tried to trap me. And in his mind, my ex husband went, oh, bingo, I'm going to do that because I know that she'll fall for it, because I know that she's hurting. She's an easy target, you know?
Fantastic.
And so I was just so happy that my daughter was there. I think that all that happiness of her being a newborn right at the beginning,
Right.
I think that just consumed me. Like I didn't even care about how ridiculous and completely non unhelpful and non uninvolved he was being. Like didn't want to change any diapers, didn't want to bathe her, didn't want to rock her to sleep, didn't want to help, none of that. He started even avoiding us.
Right.
He started staying at work, not just late, like maybe 7 or 8 o'clock. He started staying at work
Okay.
until like 9, 10 o'clock at night. Then it got later. Then he's staying at work until midnight. Then he's
Right.
not coming home until 2 in the morning. And I'm waking up to do like the 2 in the morning breastfeeding. And he's walking in the door and he's like,
Right.
oh, I got stuck in traffic. I'm like, where, in another state? Like
Yeah.
what kind of traffic delays you for 9 hours? Where were you? I still have, to this day, it could have been another woman. He could have been
Mhm.
off just sitting in his car, gambling
Right.
on his phone. He could have been doing drugs. I have no idea. I have
Right.
no idea, but he was gone when I really needed him. But
Right.
I was so wrapped up in this little beautiful ball of happiness. And I was just so happy to have her. So I just said, okay, look, it's a rough patch. A lot of
Right.
parents go through a rough patch when the baby's born. It's a tough first year.
Yeah.
It'll get better. Don't
Right.
worry, Lynn. Hang in there.
Right. Right.
And I just kept telling myself those toxic things.
Yeah.
But
I
I hit
thought
a
the same
breaking
thing.
point.
I just kept saying to myself, I'm just going to let this roll off my shoulder because I'm happy with Grayson. And all I have to do is look at him and just try to forget the other stuff.
Right, right. And even if they do something so small, like it's like we start to set the bar so low that they
Right.
can do the smallest, tiniest thing. Like we might see them hold the baby for 5 seconds one day so that we can go to the bathroom. And
Right.
when we come out, the baby might be giggling. And we're like, oh,
Right.
maybe we're going to be okay. Like
Right.
there's that false hope you get,
Sure.
looking at your baby and the father, and you're like, maybe we're going to make it through. You
Right.
know what? But I hit a breaking point when she was maybe, I don't know, 6 months old. And he started to become not just absent and I'd say like an uninvolved father, but he started to become verbally abusive. He would, even at the times that he would come home from work, he would sit in the garage and he would just smoke cigarettes and play on his phone all night long. And I came down one night and I said, I can actually smell the cigarette smoke coming in the house. And we have a brand new baby. So you have to stop.
Yeah.
And he exploded into, I don't want to say curse words.
You can.
Oh, okay. You can edit it out later if you feel like it offends anyone. But he exploded and screamed at me while I was breastfeeding my child, "Fuck you, cunt," in my face while I was holding my baby,
Oh, lovely.
breastfeeding my 6-month-old baby. And I eventually did get him to leave because what I wanted was for him to leave us alone because it started to escalate more and more where we would get into this arguments and I would be holding the baby in my arms and he would be standing in front of me with his fists clenched like he was going to hit me or making a sound like he was going to spit at us while I was holding her. And I was like, we can't do this. This can't go on. So we eventually did end up in family court. And that was one of the biggest nightmares I've ever been involved in because that first judge, no matter what I said up on that stand, I'm afraid for my life. I'm afraid for my daughter's life. Things are escalating. He shouldn't have visitation alone with this baby. He can have supervised visitation, but he should not have time alone with this child that he's never bathed, that he's barely changed a diaper, that he's never cared for this child. And now he's getting violent, verbally abusive, and threats to me in front of with the baby in my arms. The judge didn't care because I didn't show up full of bruises. The baby didn't show up full of bruises.
Yeah.
If they're not seeing it physically, they don't care. We found out going through his medical records that he had tested positive for cocaine use around the time the baby was born. So
But
he was
he's still a good dad.
Right.
Which
That's
is what
how
I
I
got.
act.
Yeah. Which
Every
is
single time.
That's why all my injunctions and petitions were all denied.
Right.
Because everything was to me and not my child. He may have been hurting me, but he didn't hurt Gray.
Right. It's so terrible the way that they
Asinine
treat
backwards.
protective parents. So for someone who was already so traumatized from previous abuse and from everything that had happened, I was absolutely devastated when that man showed up to the house to take that baby away, that baby that he had never cared for. And he took her away for 48 hours from me, and she was exclusively breastfed.
Right.
And I was not pumping. She had never taken a bottle. Like she was only nursing. I was like, I'm never going to see this baby ever again. How is she going to go 2 days without milk?
Right.
Like it was terrifying. And I wouldn't say it's actively still going on, but essentially it is because
until she's 18.
My daughter is older now, but we still share that child.
Sure.
And because the court failed to listen to me initially, I even tried to go back a second time in a different county, hoping for a different perspective. And I got a female judge the second time, and I thought, oh, this woman's going to get it. And she even claimed that she was like a domestic abuse survivor. And I was like, oh, if anyone's going to get it, it's this woman. She treated me even worse.
Yeah. My judge that denied our first injunction was a woman. So
yeah,
it, clearly it has nothing to do with it. But now I'm curious, what is something that you would have told your younger self today? If you could go back and tell your younger self any piece of advice, what do you think it would be?
Trust your instincts. Trust your gut. If you feel like something is wrong, something is probably wrong.
Right. I agree with that. sometimes it's hard to really know what your gut is telling you. And I think that's the tricky part. But getting that in line is definitely a good thing. So, well, that is a lot. And now I guess you're helping people sort of identify and work through their trauma. So are there any specific techniques or therapies that someone should try or something that they should go seek help for?
I mean, I think that if anyone has experienced any type of abuse, verbal, physical, psychological, religious, and reproductive coercion, anything like that, it's 100% not your fault. And I encourage you to try to find a really helpful therapist, a counselor, a psychologist. If, sometimes that can be hard to find given insurance coverage. If you can try to find, there are a lot of support groups available online that you can find for recovery from narcissistic abuse, recovery from sexual assault. And it is really hard once you first get going. Been sharing my story for about a year now, and it was so hard to do it the first time.
Sure.
But every time I do it, it gets a little bit easier.
Yeah.
And I
And you
reclaim
feel a
a
little
little bit.
lighter each time.
Yes, I reclaim a little bit more of my voice and
Right.
who I am. And I'm finally starting to peel my way out of the darkness.
Oh, well, I'm
But
glad to hear that.
it's been a long road, but I encourage everyone to try everything that you can. Try,
Right.
if therapy is too hard, try just getting outside, take a walk, get
Baby
a good
steps.
friend who's a good listener.
Right.
Anything.
I agree with all of that. Now, how can anyone get in touch with you or find out more about trauma-informed care?
Sure. I do have a LinkedIn page. I also have an
Okay, I'll
Instagram.
share.
Thank you. You can either contact me directly, or you can also go through the Domestic Violence Storytellers Collective.
Okay, great. So I'm going to share all of your details in the show notes for everyone. If there are any final words?
Sure. I would encourage anyone who is involved in advocacy already, anyone who is in law enforcement or who works in family law or even trauma-informed therapy, to educate themselves more about not only reproductive coercion, but about coercive control, about the insidious side of abuse that you can't see, the verbal abuse, the psychological abuse.
That's the hardest part, because nobody even calls that abuse, but it really is. It really is.
Right. I think if we can get more attention focused, I would hope that one day that we could get even better education and training for family law, family court judges and, attorneys in family law. Right. That would be my greatest hope.
Well, you know how strongly I feel about that, especially here in Florida. But yes, I mean, it all starts, I was talking to someone recently and they were like, you know what? It's not even the judge's fault, because they sort of just make decision on what's presented to them. So it's really the lawyer's job to display the information in such a way that a lawyer's job is easy. I mean, of course, the lawyer should definitely invest time in training with this type of DV specifically, because it's so unheard of. I mean, no one thinks someone's going to just kill their child because, they don't like the mother, but they do. And, it's the lawyer's responsibility to make a, ironclad case. And then it's the judge's responsibility to train to make informed decisions. Family court reform is definitely, going to be one of the hardest things that we see around the globe. But the more we talk about it, the more we share, the more people know what really goes on, which is why I tell my story all the time. No one thinks this happens until it does.
Right. Absolutely. I think if someone told me, before all this happened to me, that it was possible, I wouldn't have believed them. But now that I've experienced it and seen, what happens, it's quite a terrifying club that we all sort of belong to. It's like the wronged mothers of family court.
Yeah, and I've met a lot of moms that have lost their child like I have, and it's quite alarming how many of us there are.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Lynn. I appreciate you coming on and sharing your stories. It's always nice to get, people's input, and, I know our listeners like to hear it as well. So thank you, and hope to talk to you again.
Thank you so much, Allie. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Of course. Have a good day.
You too.
If there's someone that you want to hear from on this podcast, please feel free to send me an email. Or if you would like to be a guest, please reach out at Allie@graysonschoice.org.